The Halos are a messy team on the field and off the field. So, how did things get so messy?
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. The Tyler Skaggs trial is underway, and it's a story of an organization that has allowed a lot of mess behind the scenes. The stadium is being evaluated and will be evaluated in 2026, and it's a mess. And then Arte's tenure as owner of the Angels has been messy. Will any of this change? We've got some answers for you today. But before we talk about that, we want to thank our sponsor, FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, we're talking Angels baseball with you Monday through Friday every single weekday, so make sure you're tuned in and subscribed wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube or even on your smart TV, because there's a lot to discuss. Mike, every now and then, especially when we have new listeners, new everydayers who have just found the show, we got to do a bit of a reset and just let everybody know we understand what the issues are in this organization. It's important to rehash some things every now and then. We can't make every episode Arte needs to sell the team. However,
Right.
It is important that we understand where the Angels currently stand, and where they currently stand is a mess. They got dog crap on their shoes because that's where they're standing in it, pal. And there's a little Turtles reference for you. Let's begin with probably what's the most significant mess going on with this organization right now, and that's the Tyler Skaggs civil trial between the Skaggs family and the Angels organization.
Yeah, it's being covered by a lot of Angel reporters, but you got to follow Sam Blum on X. He has done an excellent job letting people know what's happening day to day. He asks some really good questions. I know some fans struggle with Sam. I know the organization struggles with Sam, but he has received, John, I don't know if have seen it, but he has received some affirmation from other bigger reporters that have said that guys like Sam Blum allow fans to have an inside look at the health or unhealth of their team. And so super grateful for the way that he has led the charge, especially with the Tyler Skaggs trial. Now, here's just some quick updates from Sam Blum. Jury selection took longer than expected, mainly because Angel lawyers were trying to remove any bias against the Angels. Lots of potential jurors were excused due to their own concerns about that potential bias. One potential juror said that her family loves the Angels so much that she could not be impartial in the case and was immediately excused. Another potential juror said that he's a lifelong Angel fan, but he wished that Arte would sell the team. Mm-hmm. And then another juror said that this team is struggling and my son is disappointed in the roster. It does sound like they got Angel fans in that jury pool, doesn't it?
That's what's going to happen when, the trial is taking place in Santa Ana at the courthouse, and you're in Orange County. And so, of course, you're going to come across some Angel fans who have been summoned for jury duty. So that it was a difficult part of the jury selection. Now, during opening statements, Mike, each side portrayed wildly different perspectives on whose fault it is for what's going on. And remember, the discussion here is essentially, did the Angels create an environment, and did they know beforehand that Eric Kay was a danger to not only the players, Tyler Skaggs, but to himself in regards to his addiction issues? And did the Angels do enough to address that? And that's really what's at play here. And so far, they've had very, very interesting testimony and witnesses called to the stand. Tim Meade, who was the Angels Tim Meade at one point was a secretary for the team and went on to be the president of the Hall of Fame, and then he stepped down, but it was right before he was going to be named as the defendant in this case. And fortunately for him, I should say, he is no longer a defendant, but simply somebody who is a witness in this case. Angels traveling secretary Tom Taylor who is currently employed, Angels HR rep Cecilia Schneider, HR director Myra Castro, Angels PR Grace McNamee, and then probably the most significant witness so far, other than Mike Trout, is Kamala Kay, who is the ex-wife of Eric Kay. Remember, Eric was sentenced to 22 years in prison in the criminal trial. Now, this is a civil trial, meaning that there is money on the line here, and essentially the Skaggs family is looking for an amount of damages that would equate to perhaps what Tyler could have made over the course of his career had he not had his untimely passing. And so that's where we stand in terms of some of the witnesses who have testified so far. But the first prominent witness, not first, but the most prominent witness probably was Mike Trout, wasn't it, Mike?
Yeah, Sam Blum reported that Trout got choked up when he gave his testimony, said it was incredibly emotional. He said that Skaggs was like a brother to him, that he misses him. He also shared some very unflattering stories about the things that Eric Kay would do for money that the players would participate in. Eric Kay, again, the guy that was put in prison and was disseminating, sharing the opioids, the drugs. And it sounds like he was doing a lot of things to get money to be able to get access to more opioids, more drugs to be able to pass along. Now, you mentioned that the Skaggs family is suing for a certain amount. Now, there's been different numbers that have been thrown out there, but the bottom line is that they're seeking at least $210 million in damages. John, it's just messy and sad. And I'll tell you, as I listened to and read through the testimony, and again, thank you to Sam Blum of The Athletic, I came away with one major perspective from the Angels side. And I'm not defending. I just want to speak very honestly about how I read it. It felt like, with Eric Kay specifically, it felt like they were giving him chance after chance after chance after chance. It felt like they were really trying to help him. That was my takeaway from the conversations and testimony that were given so far. And right or wrong, that's what it felt like. The organization was trying to really help this guy, I think, in the best way that they know how, in a business organization, in an organization that is a baseball organization. It felt like they were really trying to make sure that this guy was not going to be a detriment to himself, and giving him a lot of opportunity to try to get right. That was my initial takeaway from all of the testimony so far. I don't know what your thoughts are, but am I off there, do you think? Or do you think that that's kind of what has been portrayed so far?
Mike, I think you're right in the sense that the Angels did give him chance after chance after chance. But the problem with that is that they knew he had a problem.
Yes.
And gave him chance after chance after chance. And within that is the argument that the Skaggs lawyers are making. Did they follow their own rules? Well, according to, Myra Castro, who testified as the HR director, no. And she even offered that maybe some of the rules in the rule book or the employee handbook were suggestions and not hard and fast rules. I don't think I've ever worked anywhere where the HR handbook is referred to as a suggestion. And at the same time, you can make a mistake, you can have an issue, and HR might give you a chance to correct that. They might make an adjustment if there's an issue between two employees, or they just might outright fire you. Right. And so to me, when you say the Angels were trying to give him chance after chance after chance, there's I don't know, maybe some nobility in that. At the same time, that's very, very difficult to deny that you knew anything was going on and that you knew anything was troublesome with Eric Kay. Now, Tim Mead, Tom Taylor, they've since not recalled, according to their testimony on the stand, certain situations where drugs were involved or even being present in the presence of drugs that were procured by Eric Kay. Kamala Kay has a different story on the stand. At the end of the day, Mike, it's just messy, right? And this is one of the big messes that the Angels have allowed themselves to step in. And I'm shocked that the Angels wouldn't want to settle this before going to court, because any way you look at it, I know they're going to be in front of a jury. There's some air of responsibility on the business side of the Angels organization.
Yeah.
And so to address the Skaggs family out of court and maybe handle this before it goes to trial, well, now you're in trial. And now a lot of this dirty laundry is coming out about players who have been on your team, players who are currently on your team, the way your staff handle things behind the scenes, and a lot of ugly, messy stories coming out of it that, quite frankly, I'm not sure any other team in MLB or even any other business would take it this far. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you get in front of a jury and it's real people with real emotions. It's humans seeing both sides, having to feel what Eric's wife felt, having to feel what the Skaggs family has felt, having to feel what the Angels have felt, right? Listening to some of the people that work there. The likelihood of this going in the Angels' direction is slim to none, in my opinion, because if they settled, then they would have been able to at least give some resource to the Skaggs family, and I would say in honor of Tyler. And that's not an admission of guilt. In this case, I think that they're going to have to pay a lot, because I think that emotion is going to play a big role in this. The other piece that I thought was interesting about this, John, is I read an article the other day about Marge Schott, who was the owner of the Reds. And then remember they removed her because she just was awful. and then of course there was Frank McCourt with the Dodgers, and there's been other owners that have had to be pushed out. I don't know if this rises to that previous level of being pushed out. Now with Marge Schott, I think that was probably the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
But
some racism will get you fired,
right?
Yeah, for sure.
But I think with other owners and other issues, I don't know if it rises to the level of, oh, we got to get rid of Arte Moreno. But I do think that has to be a conversation or considered, don't you?
I think that the responsibility of the team or the lack of responsibility is just really glaring. And I don't think that, like I said, in 2025, people don't run businesses like this. And I know that this was, 10 to 8 to 6 years ago when all of this was really going on. But Mike, there was something the other day of Eric Hay saying that he's had, an opioid addiction back to 2007. And that was his own admission. That was, his intake form when he was going into rehab. And so, a lot of people ask, how could the Skaggs family not know if Tyler had an opioid addiction? Well, I think it's very easy to not know if somebody has an opioid addiction, and including the K family. You and I have dealt with someone personally who had an addiction, and none of us knew until the secret came out. And it was like, wait a second, right? Yeah. And so, and that was really hard. And so there's part of it that's like, you want to help to the best of your ability. And maybe this is the Angels' position, is you want to help to the best of your ability. You're also not willing to go there in your mind. You're also not willing to understand, like, oh, this is worse than I thought it was. And I am making this easier on myself by saying, oh gosh, like Tim Meade said, I thought he was just screwing up his, prescriptions for his mental health, and it was really difficult on him. There's a lot of ways that people try to soften the blow. And whether that's the right thing or the wrong thing, it's just what people do. And I think everybody involved in this situation is trying to do that, or had tried to have done that, whether it was Skaggs, whether it was Kay. But the problem is, Mike, and I said this on our show a couple of weeks ago when I talked about the trial, the minute it crosses company lines, there's some culpability there. Yeah. And no matter if you think that this was a Skaggs thing or Eric Kay thing, it happened crossing company lines, and it involves your employees of your team. And so you bear some of that responsibility. I don't know. In my opinion, I don't know if it's $210 million worth of responsibility.
Sure.
But that's going to be for the judges and the jury to decide, right?
And that's my point. You get in front of the jury, they're going to give some sort of number to the Skaggs family, right? Because everybody bears responsibility. Everybody Tyler did, right? Eric did. And the Angels organization did. As soon as they found out about these things, they sent him to rehab. And then you have to discuss if you even bring him back. But if he fails a second time and there's an issue a second time, that's a fireable offense. And the fact that they didn't do that and move on that is what's really kind of being discussed here, is how many chances did you get to give to this guy, and he kept going back to the well. And I get that he's an addict, and I get that I get that, all of that, but at some point the organization has to go, that's enough, man. We don't allow this. This is not this is not our culture.
And I will say this, and we'll kind of end it here. This is messy. How does this get better? I mean, look, if this does not go the Angels' way, which you and I strongly feel, and I'm sure a lot of people feel, this is not going to go their way.
Yeah.
And they are going to be responsible for some sort of monetary value in damages to the Skaggs family. And so maybe it's a slap in the face, Mike. Maybe it's a wake-up call for this organization and the way that they handle things. It just sounds like a lot of people who shouldn't be in charge of the areas in which they are in charge, especially when it comes to how you manage people, right? And how you are a leader to the people in your department, or the leader to the people who work for you, right? I think that this is a very big wake-up call, and it's this kind of thing that has to change. And so again, how do they fix this mess? I think it's going to cost them, and I think that that's going to be the wake-up call that they need. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, the mess continues, and the mess gets into the stadium, and it gets into 11 messy seasons. We're going to have those conversations coming right up.
The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on all of the NBA action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the National Basketball Association. And even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride a hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It just keeps the game always exciting for you, especially when your team's making a late push. So right now, FanDuel is offering new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. And of course, you can subscribe on YouTube, and we appreciate your support there. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to today's YouTube episode and get in the conversation by getting in the comments. You can also hit us up on social media at Locked On Angels, at Super Halo Bros, wherever you like to social your medias. Mike, the city of Anaheim sent auditors into Angel Stadium this past season to evaluate its condition, and more evaluation is going to take place in early 2026, but there isn't quite a clear direction as to what that will mean for Arte Moreno and the Angels organization. Now, one member of city council said it doesn't appear as if renovations are on the horizon anytime soon, and there are no long-term discussions taking place, and none are imminent at the moment.
Yeah, in regards to the stadium, Arte Moreno said, and this was a while ago, but he said, I'm not going to put $200 to $300 million in a stadium that the city owns without any participation. Now, Angel Stadium is one of the oldest in the league. And John, the last major renovations took place in 1998 when it was Edison International Field, remember? And so years ago, I graduated in 1998. So that's how long ago it was. And this is really a mess. It's one of the messes that the Angels have to deal with. And when you look at this stadium right now and the needs in the stadium right now, a lot of the questions really are just on its structure and is it sustainable moving forward, right? And I think that that's got to be the first thing that they need to evaluate and then work through. And that's going to take a lot. It's interesting. You can upgrade and put LED walls and panels and make it look fantastic, right? All that stuff. I love that has been brought to the stadium over the last 20 years, but structure is really what you miss sometimes.
It's the bones, right?
Absolutely. And that's going to cost a lot to replace some things. Plus you hit one area, then you're going to find out that there's 4 or 5 other areas that you're going to have to work on as well. Again, one of the oldest stadiums in baseball. And so I think structure and the scaffolding of Angel Stadium needs to be worked on. It just feels like this feels like our political situation where one side is yelling at the other side while they're yelling, everybody's hurting and falling apart, right? And that's what it feels like with the Angels and with the city of Anaheim. Is they're yelling at each other going, well, you have to fix it, no, you have to fix it, or well, we got to go in partners. Meanwhile, one good shake and that stadium is probably going to be in a whole lot of trouble, right? And so, maybe they get some thunder sticks and they bang it a little bit too loud,
but too much.
I think that's probably going to be the major renovations that they're going to have to do in that stadium.
Yeah, when you think about all of the regulations in terms of how California wants you to retrofit things for earthquake safety, right? Yeah. There was in Pasadena where I live, you go to Old Town Pasadena, there were a couple businesses that had to move to other buildings and just completely shut down because the buildings they were in had to be retrofitted and worked on. And they're smaller buildings, so it didn't take as long. But can you imagine that for a whole stadium? And Mike, I got to tell you, in 25 years worth of rules and regulations and all that stuff, there's sure to be things that are not up to speed. And that's even including areas of the stadium that just aren't great and things are falling apart and things need to be renovated, right? The seats are green, but they're like a faded light green, right? It's not good looking anymore. And it goes beyond the looks of the stadium. It goes into the structure, the bones of the stadium. So it's a huge safety thing. And when it comes to how did we get here? Well, it really comes back to Arte Moreno tried to make a deal for this stadium, and it was built on backdoor deals and corruption, and to the point where the FBI had to investigate the mayor of Anaheim, and he pushed the sale through super quickly. I remember when the sale went through and everyone said, well, what was it, 250 million or something like that? And and certainly less than what the renovations are going to cost, it seems like.
Right.
And to see that sale go through, I remember both you and I were like, what?
Wow.
That's it?
Yeah.
That's how much he got the parking and the stadium for all of that? And that's the thing, Mike, is that could we have not just done this above board from the beginning? Because then perhaps there isn't a question of, well, who's going to fix it? Are you going to fix it or am I going to fix it? You're the city, you own it. And look, I hate to say it, but it is the city property. And so there is an investment on their part that needs to be put in. And I think that's actually part of the evaluation is what needs to be done. How much is it going to cost? And then they're going to go into a whole who's responsible for what here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But is that going to go to court too? Is that going to have to go to trial? Is that where this is going to have to go? How many more years is Arte Moreno willing to be in court or have his team in court or drag things into court and out of court? We're doing this again, right?
Yeah. And this is why when you prioritize money as your strategy and as your vision, this is why it's terrible, because this is the results. The results are you're not doing what is necessary to create a better baseball experience, which ultimately brings in more resource, by the way, and to get the right players and all of that. Artie has ignored that for the last 20 plus years, right? The Angels were owned by Disney. In 98, they renovated, and then they sold 2002 at the end when they won the World Series to 2003, right? Artie's had this team now for over 20 years, and they haven't done a thing. They haven't done anything. And that's the problem, is he's prioritizing money. That's his vision. That's his strategy. How this improves is that you stop ignoring the small things. These small things that are now huge things like the scaffolding and the structural stuff. When you don't ignore that, it has a cost, but it doesn't cost as much because you've already paid attention to it, right? And he's not paid attention to it, or he hasn't had people that have paid attention to it because they're too busy trying to hide opioid addictions, or they're too busy trying to ignore the reality of what's happening on the field. Who knows, right? If they're gaslighting fans about the players and the decisions they're making about manager, then that's not just one lane that they're living in. That's the reality of what's deep inside of this organization. It's a bait and switch. It's a, let's pretend it's not happening. It's a, hey, the AC doesn't work in this room. Let's just go to the next room where the AC is working, right? It's not a proactive environment from all indications. And that's the problem with culture, right? Culture is either something you build or something you allow. Well, Artie has allowed a terrible, terrible culture in the Angels organization.
Now, I'm going to say something before everybody gets in the comments and yells at you. And it's about your comment about it's about making money. Yeah, it's a business and it's about making money and it's about, making more than you put into it. And that's fine. That's what you should be doing as a team. However, when that's your sole focus, you leave a ton of stuff on the table. You leave money on the table when you don't make investments. You got to spend money to make money. You look at teams around the league, and we keep bringing it up because it's tangentially related to us because of Shohei Ohtani. The Dodgers spent money to make money, and they made all the money back that they could from the Shohei Ohtani contract just through 1 year of having him on the team. It's the lack of foresight we often talk about, Mike, with this organization where, yeah, you know what? You're going to have to bite the bullet on a big contract, but you're going to make that right back because of sponsorship deals and all that stuff. And they just don't see that. And it's because, as we've been saying all this week, they operate year to year. They are the fiscal angels, right? They try to make everything fit within a calendar year. And that's just not how you plan a business. That's not how you run things. And so when you have a lack of foresight, when you have a lack of investment, these things come back to bite you. And the fact that you haven't done the necessary things over the last 25 years and 20 years that Artie has owned the team, you got to make the small improvements along the way, and you got to make sure that everything is up to snuff. And I also understand it's not their building, but you're renting it for $1 from the city. That's a real thing, my friends.
Yeah.
They are renting Angel Stadium of Anaheim for $1. Oh, by the way, they took of Anaheim off the signage. So for as much as Artie wants to claim it doesn't belong to him, well, he's certainly making it look like it doesn't belong to the city of Anaheim either.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. It's the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. We make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right means that you can cash in. And with football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on all of the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. You can download the Prize Pick app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right.
All right, we got into some specific messes with the civil trial and the Angels Stadium issues. But Mike, it's been a messy 11 seasons, a messy 11 years. The Angels haven't been to the playoffs in 11 years. It's the longest streak in baseball. The Tigers broke that. They were tied with the Angels, and the Tigers broke that in 2024. And guess what? They got back there again in 2025. So where does the blame fall on these 11 messy seasons?
The owner. It's really on Arte Moreno, and we know that, and fans know that, right? And here's why it's an appropriate response. The bigger question is when will he sell? But it's an appropriate response because it's his organization. He's in charge. He has purchased this organization, and all indications were from the beginning that this was going to be a successful organization. I mean, I think they were on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and it was Arte Moreno and a new way to own teams and all of those things. That's the most appropriate way. This response, it's Arte Moreno's fault, is the most appropriate response because he's had the controls. Now, where it falters and you might want to push back is, players and managers and all of those things. I get that, but they were all hired by Arte Moreno's people. And so Arte is in charge of bringing in the right people. And when it came to about 2010, he lost all of the people that were in the organization with Disney, and then he started bringing in his team. John Carpino started in 2010. What happened since 2010? Well, we've only made the playoffs once, and we haven't been over 500 since 2015. So it is Arte Moreno's fault. The bigger question, John, is will Arte ever sell this team? What do you think?
Well, Sam Blum of The Athletic, Jeff Fletcher, the OC Register, all indications and reports from them and what they've heard are no. And Jeff Fletcher said earlier this season, it's been the number one question for many Angels fans ever since Arte pulled the team off the market in January of 2023. And plenty of fans out there have basically decided that nothing matters other than him selling the team. And the answer is the same today as it was back then. And then Moreno has not given any indication in, subsequent interviews. And even most recently this spring, he's not mentioned that he's planning on selling the team in the foreseeable future. Now, since then, there's really been nothing from others around this organization indicating that he's changed his mind. And that's something that Jeff Fletcher has asked regularly. And then Sam Blum said the same thing of the potential sale and Arte Moreno selling back on a Q&A he did back in July. He said, I've heard nothing related to him selling. In fact, I've talked to people that would know, and they say that he isn't selling. So we'll see. Anything can happen. I just don't think that's on the table at the moment. But Sam added an interesting little nugget, Mike. Moreno doesn't really spend anymore. People need to understand that the Angels operate like a small market club and have done that now for 5 years. And Sam finished by saying, it is what it is. So that's a little bit of a nugget, like you mentioned, about the fact that, Artie did spend a lot of money on big contracts. Hasn't really done that in the last few years, has he?
No, he hasn't. And the reason why he's treating it more as a small market team is because he sees that as, look what I did, and it didn't work. So why would I keep doing that? Which on the surface, that's a great question to ask, and it's a great statement to make. The problem is that he doesn't see, what's the phrase, the forest for the trees. He doesn't see what's actually happening, right? He doesn't see that he didn't spend on development. He didn't spend on scouting. He didn't spend on minor league stuff. He didn't spend on any of those things.
The investment, Mike, spending money to make money. You need to invest in the structure of your team. We talked about the structure and bones of the stadium. What about the structure and bones of the team on the field? The reason people come to Angel Stadium to watch the team on the field and see winning seasons. Again, it's a lack of investment in the right places.
Yeah.
And now it's all just coming to bite them in the butt. Now it's bitten them the last 11 years because they didn't have the infrastructure in place to, feed this major league club with talent that could go around Mike Trout and Albert Pujols and Shohei Ohtani. And then you talk about, Anthony Rendon's a big bust. Yeah, that's a big bust, but it shouldn't cripple your team.
Yeah.
The fact that just because this guy is eating up a portion of your team's salary, it shouldn't paralyze you.
Right.
And
so you can't do a
from
thing.
Being successful. Yeah, exactly.
And when you look back at what Artie did when he first got here, he got the Bartolo Colons and the Vlad Guerreros and he got the Kelvin Escobars and he signed the Dan Herons and he was able to pay for those guys. But remember, he had the scaffolding, he had the structure, he inherited all of those great players and all of those great scouts when Disney owned this organization. The one thing that I would say to Disney is that they let the baseball people do baseball things. Yeah. And we saw the results of that for about a 10-year stretch from 2002 to about 2014, right? And so that we saw the impact that those young players who developed could really make on the team when they were allowed to play, and it's because what the scouts did and already surrounded them with good players. The problem is that they stopped having young players develop. They stopped bringing them up because they weren't ready. And so when you got a Shohei and a Mike Trout and an Albert Pujols, you didn't have the infrastructure around them to help them be successful. And Artie kept trying to do the same thing over and over and over again. Go get the big game and we'll put them on this team. The problem is you didn't have Garrett Anderson and you didn't have John Lackey and you didn't have Tim Salmon and you didn't have Troy Gloss and you didn't have Sean Figgins, right? You didn't have any of those guys. Now they have those guys, but there's still a whole lot of holes that they need to fill because they've ran in the same mud hole the last 10 to 11 years, right? Yeah. And they're still digging out of that mud hole in 2026.
So I'll say it clear for everybody here. When will things improve? Well, when Artie sells the team. We're on board with that. And so for those who are new and for those who have been here every day with us since day one, Artie must sell this team. And we'll make that 100% clear in case we haven't done so in the 100 episodes or so that we've had to make that point. Right, Mike?
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your next listen, check out Locked On MLB Game Night. You can find the show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, be sure you give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to today's show. get in that comment section and we'll do our best to respond to you. We definitely read everybody's comments, but we want to make sure we do our best to respond as well. Mike, what do you have on deck for tomorrow's show?
It's Fan Mail Friday. We would love to hear from you based off of what we've talked about this week, based off of your thoughts. And we would even love to hear who it is that you would love to see lead this team, come to this team, sign with this team, or get traded to this team. We'd love your thoughts on Fan Mail Friday tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right, looking forward to that conversation. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
All right, for the sickos who love this team and our everydayers who love to watch and listen, we'll see you back here on Friday.